Hi, everyone. Welcome to Reset and Regulate, building back to school routines that actually stick. We are so glad that you guys are here today. My name is Deanna. I'm the founder of the Mindset Tapestry. I am thrilled to be joined by two amazing women and friends, Dr. Chloe and Courtney, who are not only experts in child development and parenting, but we are all so deeply committed to helping families build more peaceful and connected homes. So it was just a natural fit to partner with Auggie, which is an incredible parenting app, to really share our knowledge in transitioning our kids back to school. Um, I'd love to tell you guys a little bit more about what each of us do, and then we can get into the webinar. So, my name is Deanna. Like I said, I have over a decade of experience teaching special education. I taught third grade special ed for about, a decade. I have a master's and, took a pivot in my career when I started the Mindset Tapestry, which really stemmed from my life experiences as an educator. So I taught through the pandemic. I saw firsthand how kids as early as 5 were experiencing anxiety, depression, low self-confidence, and simultaneously went through my own really bad, severe postpartum depression following my second son. I really leaned into these neuroscience-based just ancient practices and it completely changed my life. So when I say that, I'm talking about affirmations, mirror talk, meditation, movement, and really just went back to my roots and rewired my brain. And as an educator and a mom, it was like light bulb moment. Why aren't we teaching this to our kids? Why aren't we starting these practices in early childhood before life happens? So that is my mission. I'm so glad to be here. I'm also a mom of two little boys that are 5 and 3, and I'll pass the baton to Chloe.
Thank you, Deanna. Do you mind pushing that slide forward one?
Yes, you got it.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to meet you. I'm so happy to be here with both Courtney and Deanna. My name is Dr. Chloe Massey. I am an educator in my past life, and now I'm a child development specialist. I'm a parenting educator. My background is in education, and I've moved into parenting support as I became a parent. I'm a mother to three boys. So I have a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a little guy that just turned 4 months the other day. I have a private practice where I support parents in understanding parenting and child development. And I think, so many of us can relate to the fact that parenting is really hard. And even if we're parenting multiple kids that come from the same parents, it's still different every single time. And I think we're at such a unique point in the summer. Some of you may already have kids back in school, depending on where you are, but many of us are thinking about this shift that's coming up. So I'm excited to get into it with you guys. Aside from my private practice where I meet with and support parents, I am a professor, a consultant, and an advisor. And I just do my best to bring in the research and make it really practical and allow parents to feel empowered. Like, I've got this, which I'm constantly trying to tell myself too. So I will pass the baton to Courtney.
Hello, I'm Courtney English. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist and a mom to two little girls. One's 4.5 and one just turned 2 months. So I'm like 2 months behind Chloe with our postpartum journey. So I specialize in sensory regulation, education, and implementation. It's what I loved doing when I was in the clinic. I'm no longer in the clinic just because, again, like Tiana said, like her life shifted when she had her second. When I had my first, my life shifted and changed completely. I had a bad postpartum experience, anxiety, depression with my first, and I think it was because I felt a little disconnected from her because of my anxiety, and then also just because now I'm finding out that, she has some sensory processing differences and difficulties. And so that may have been why we struggled to connect at the beginning. So anyways, I wanted to create something that, parents could kind of relate to because I was like, oh, I feel like I have no support or no one like, like how Deanna and Chloe like want to support parents. And I felt like I didn't have any support or no one understood me. And I was like, maybe if I start posting about this, people will connect to it and feel like less alone. So again, I shifted to pediatrics because I kind of missed this part. Sorry. I used to be a hand therapist in OT and then I switched to peds when my daughter was like 3 months, right when I went back to work. Um, so yeah, and with that being said, I created a couple of different resources. Like I have like a musical bedtime book. I joined a board for this program that they have. It's actually in Alabama, but I consult with them and help them create programs for special needs classes in the community that are like free or very low cost, which I really love. And I do a lot of parent coaching education for how to build sensory routines at home for proactive regulation or just to connect with your kids so that you can have, again, like more peaceful routines at home. And so my main focus is on sensory regulation and nervous system regulation and knowing all of these things about sensory regulation and nervous regulation. I've learned a lot about myself and reflecting on like what helps me regulate. And then it's like I apply it to my child. And I feel like so many parents could benefit from that, just like reflecting on their own regulation, seeing it in their child and being like, oh, it might be the same for them, but just a little different because their kids and their occupation's different. They're like more play-based. But anyways, that's a little about me.
Okay, amazing. So, as you can see, each of us are going to bring a little bit of a different lens to the conversation. Our conversation today is all about taking the stress out of back to school, replacing it with something that feels very doable, very connected. And as Courtney just touched upon, we know that when our kids feel regulated and supported, like the routines stick. And same for us. When we feel regulated and supported, our routines stick. And it's not because we're forcing anything, it's just because it feels good and it becomes a part of our life. So that's what we're really leaning into today. We're going to get into three main buckets here, which we believe are the pillars to having a successful back to school transition, which is our bedtime routines, our morning routines, and then the actual transition of back to school. So we're going to jump right into it. Bedtime routines. Chloe, you want to kick us off?
Yes, yes, of course. So I don't know about all of you, but I feel, and you can pop in the chat if this feels relatable. Um, Over the summer, many of us lose our routine and we lose our routine across the day. Many of us lose a bedtime routine. Bedtime gets pushed later because, Deanna, we can't see the slides anymore, by the
Hold
way.
on. I don't know where that just went. So sorry. I will get it
No,
back
that's okay.
while you're talking.
Yeah, I'll continue. So what happens is our routines get a little, there we go, we're back. Our routines get a little looser during the summer and bedtime gets pushed back later. So as we are in these transitional late weeks of summer, we want to get into the importance of the bedtime routine. So I think just starting with, why does a bedtime routine matter? We have a lot of research that tells us predictable routines really help our kids' bodies and minds know when it's time to wind down. And actually, with a routine, we can make sleep easier. So, for those of you with infants like Courtney and I, we know the importance of a routine with a baby, right? And we are doing all these things on repeat to get them to understand when it's time to wind down. And so I actually want us to think about bedtime routines in the same way. As you are shifting from your summer, my kids are on a later bedtime all summer. As you're starting to shift to an earlier bedtime, things that you can think about creating calming routines or activities before bedtime, right? So whether it's reading or drawing or quiet play, I work with a lot of parents who say their kids are most riled up at the end of the day. Like that is when their kids are physically fighting each other, rolling around and tumbling, or when their co-parent loves to play the like wrestle match after dinner. And what I would encourage you to do is move towards more relaxing or low stimulating activities to help them wind down. Another huge piece around the bedtime routine is just having some consistency. So whether it's you doing bedtime, if you have a co-parent or partner doing bedtime or another caregiver in the home, having some consistency. And maybe for you, consistency is doing the same thing in the same order every night. Right. So when my husband was growing up, um, his mom used to say, tinkle, teeth, book, bed. And that was their thing. They did every single night. And so for you, making sure whether it's bath, PJs, teeth, book, having a consistent order, it also will give your children some autonomy. If they know what's coming next, then they can call out what's next. I'm a big fan of visual charts too. So having something visual to help guide them is always very, very helpful. For older kids and teens, I'm looking at the ages here. We've got a couple older kids. So I'd say a really important thing with the bedtime routine, especially towards the end of summer, is having a screen cutoff. So encouraging your child to turn their screen off at least 60 minutes before bed. And I would, if you have an older child, then have them be part of what that screen time cutoff looks like and have a plan for what happens when the screen goes away. Because we also have a lot of research around screen time right before bed and what that can do. I mean, it's the same reason why we shouldn't be with our phones in bed, right? That's not going to encourage good sleep habits for us. Okay. And then finally, before I pass this along, just wanted to talk about when you start shifting the routines. So if your child's already in school, do not panic. If you're like, oh, did I miss the boat? You did not miss the boat. If you have the luxury of a couple weeks before school, I'd say 2 weeks before school, start to focus on shifting the bedtime routine. I will tell you, we are starting now in my house. Like I'm starting to rein it in just a little bit. I'm trying to keep the wake up times consistent as well. So just encouraging my kids. I mean, they wake up pretty early anyway. So what we're doing is we use like a red light, green light alarm clock in our room and in their room. And we have that set to let them know when they can come out. Um, Make sure when it comes to consistency around shifting the schedule, stay consistent on the weekends. Okay. So give yourself the next week or two to start to form a schedule that's going to work for you and your children when the school year starts. And I am going to pass it on to Courtney.
Thank you,
Talk
Chloe.
about some regulation.
Yes, before I even start, I agree with everything that Chloe said. Like, some of the things you might say might overlap, but I'm going to talk more in detail about like sensory regulation and nervous system regulation at bedtime and just some tips and things that you can do that might help you because, with change in routine, right? Went from having a summer routine to a school routine. There might be some dysregulation because the brain has to get used to a new pattern. And that can be really hard for kids because the summer pattern is fun. And even though fun can be dysregulating, which it sounds wild, right? But it can really hype us up and amp us up. The shift from school to can it's like the children anticipate these increased demands and so just knowing that there's some predictability and familiarity with the routine is helpful. So one thing for bedtime is that I always talk about is activating the green zone, which shifts our nervous system and our brain into this parasympathetic state, which is like a calm state. If we fall asleep, first of all, it's really hard to fall asleep when you're like sympathetic nervous system, like fight or flight, red zones activated, like we're all fired up, our brains like constantly going in a loop. But some kids, might be doing that and then just pass out because they're so tired, which can cause a whole nother slew of things. But anyways, we want this green zone activated at night. So there are some things that you can build into your routine from like a bottom up approach. So right, we're like nourishing the sensory system to help the nervous system feel safe and to turn on that green light so that we can fall asleep calmly. So, one of the things that I love to do is use like bubbles or breath work. So, like for little kids, it's harder for children really don't learn how to start blowing or doing that motor plan until like 2.5, depending on their skills. But for that age and up, you can start doing like blowing bubbles while the bath fills up, or you can bring like a straw into the bathtub and make like a bubble mountain where they're like blowing bubbles in the bath and trying to make a large Mountain, you can even do that in the sink with brushing. Breath work and blowing, that activates, it stimulates our vagus nerve and it activates that green zone. So by doing these things in our routine, we're kind of priming the brain to be in this state where our green light's on and our red light is slowly diminishing. That's one of the things. Another thing that you can do is like heavy work. I talk about that all the time. Um, Heavy work could be anything from like, in the bath, you can have sponges and have them squeezing. A lot of the times I like to have them carry things to transition from like one part to the next. And then also adding in some movement, so vestibular input that's organizing. So you don't want to do, like Chloe said, a lot of like crazy jumping around at bedtime. Um, and if you do, you want to do it earlier in the routine, because if you have a sensory seeker, they're going to seek that out. So you're going to have to meet them at that high energy threshold and then kind of help deregulate them and help them calm down by doing some organizing movement and then calming movement. So it's like, and that's where a lot of the people struggle with that, is because it's like, oh, like I keep doing these activities and they keep getting more amped up and amped up. Well, that's because we need to shift them. We need to organize them and then calm them. So something that you can do is by adding obstacle courses into your routine. So you don't have to be like, time out, let's do an obstacle course in a game that's like, doesn't really go with the vibe, right? Like we're doing the bedtime routine, but I love to do obstacle courses when putting on our pajamas. So, or like a hide and seek game. So I'll set up, like, you don't have to have like stepping stones or anything, but if you have them, you can use them. You can even just use pillows and put them in like a line and put the PJs on one side of the room. And then the beginning of the obstacle course is on the next, and they just have to jump and crash, get one item, put it on, start it all over again. A very simple one. I have a lot more examples on my page and everything if you want to refer to those as well. But that kind of organizing movement, you're bringing movement into something that you already have to do. So you're encouraging them to actually do it. And then there's going to be less fighting. And then, and you're also giving them that input at the same time. So the jumping and crashing, even though like you're jumping, but you're jumping and crashing, you're getting vestibular proprioceptive in a pattern. And then I always like to end with some like deep pressure or something, or cuddles or rocking and squeezing. And those types of things will really help calm down the nervous system after doing a little bit more organizing movement. Um, and then I want to talk about a little bit about co-regulation too. So like co-regulation at bedtime is super important. I always give this example because it's so funny. Like I actually lived it. I was like, I gotta tell this to everyone. It was like fighting bedtime because we had a super busy, stimulating day. It was very exciting, but we had a hard time down regulating. So my daughter, and this was while I was pregnant, so I didn't have a baby yet. My husband was helping me because I was like, I need help. He's like, you need help? I was like, I need help, please. He's like, you never need help. But anyway, she did not want to go to bed and she just started yelling, no, no, no. And then I was like, how can I create a sense of togetherness right now? I'm like looking around the room. And then I joined her. I was like, no, no. And then my husband joined and I looked at him, I was like, and we were like, no, no. And then we all just started like laughing at each other because like it became like her like fighting bedtime became like a silly moment for us, by us like joining her and imitating her in that like no. And then we kind of all like, I think her and my husband started like kind of wrestling a little bit. And then we shifted to like something else. I was like, oh, I have an idea. And this is something that I recommend a lot, is bringing in like someone else who isn't like the mom or dad. And I was like, oh my goodness, did you hear like your teddy bear is chanting no? And then like the teddy bear will join, the teddy bear will be like, oh my gosh, where are your PJs? I can't find them. And then all of a sudden you've created a sense of togetherness and you've pulled them out of this like demand state in their brain. So those are kind of like my main little tips to for you to try at home or just to start thinking about. And the only other thing I want to say about bedtime is like timing and sleep pressure. So just like seeing, is my child overtired or undertired? Do they need, like Chloe said, do you need to shift back the bedtime because they woke up really early and they're overtired? Or that probably is going to be the case for back to school, right? They're waking up earlier, so you're going to want to shift the bedtime earlier so that they're not overtired. Because if they are, then you'll start to see like the zoomies and you'll start to see that like sensory seeking behavior, like pattern in your child. So sorry, that's like a mouthful, but that's like my little, what do you call it? Summary.
Courtney, I love what you said, because I see this a lot in my practice actually. When parents are struggling with bedtime, it's often because bedtime is too late and their kids are too tired, and
Mhm.
thus like adrenaline is pumping through their body to keep them awake and they're
Mhm.
wired, right? And I think we all probably can relate to that at some point, being so exhausted to your core that you're actually kind of wired and can't sleep.
Mhm.
I would encourage all of you to think about, I'm doing the same thing. Think about what time your child is going to bed and, look at their behaviors because oftentimes those zoomies are actually a result of them being overtired. And that's why they happen right before bed.
Mhm. Yep.
So yeah,
So,
Those stimulating chemicals in the brain are like, oh, I guess we got to stay up. So let's like
yeah, like so
rally.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Chloe and Courtney, just touching upon that, is there a time that you suggest that is best for bedtime, especially with back to school? And does age matter? Like, would that shift from like, would you put a 5-year-old to bed at a different time than you would a 3-year-old? I'm just thinking my own situation.
Courtney, I'm curious what you have to say. I mean, I'm a big fan of the 7 p.m. bedtime. That
Mhm.
being said, every family circumstance is different. I work with a lot of families whose parents get home later and they want to see their kids, so they adjust in a way that works for their family.
Mhm.
But I would say 7 p.m., between 7 and 8 p.m. is like universally in early childhood a very appropriate bedtime. And kids will wake up between, I mean, it depends if you're my kids or not, but like between 5:30 and 7:30, right? So if you
Yeah,
want them to get enough sleep, the only way for them to get that is through an earlier bedtime because we can't control when they wake up,
Very
right?
true.
So I'd
Yes.
say 7 to 8. Later in elementary school, we've got a couple people with 8, 9, 10, 11 year olds. It does start to shift later. And that's
Mhm.
often a result of like the after school activities. And I hate to say it, but the homework load. There are
Yeah.
literally not enough hours. Courtney, what do you think?
Well, I think too, like just starting to pick up on your child's patterns of how many hours they typically sleep when given the opportunity, right? Like I know that my child is like a she will do like uh 10 to 11 hours. So I know like if she wakes up at 6 that she's going to need to go to bed between like uh well 6 and 8 is what I say, like 6 and 8, but
Mhm.
I'm always like calculating it. Like you ever seen like that TikTok where the mom's like, okay, if I go to bed if I have to pick him up at 3, then I have to start doing this at 2. Like that's like what I'm doing in my head all the time. But I would say between 6 and 8. Like the other day we had my daughter woke up at 6. We did so much. I could tell she was starting to get exhausted and kind of cranky and a little, on edge at like 5. And I was like, all right, bedtime's at 6:15. And she went to like literally lay down within a minute asleep. And she slept till 6 the next day. So that day she needed 12 hours because she got more stimulation.
Mhm.
We're talking about sleep pressure. Sleep pressure increases with more stimulation, more awake time, more movement, more mental load. So I knew that she was going to need more sleep that night. So I think, and I've worked with sleep consultants, and they say 6 to 8 p.m. is a sweet spot, especially like as melatonin starts to be producing and be at its peak with sleep pressure. I would say like you're right, 7 p.m. is like the most ideal time. And parents
Mhm.
think it's like you think, oh, it's too early. I can't put my child to bed at 6 or 7. That's early, but they need the sleep and it
right.
helps so many things.
Another thing I just want to add too that I started implementing that's been like incredible is we made sleep like bed baskets. So we keep them by their bed. For me, like they just want so much at that time. And I know it's them just stalling bedtime, but it's like I'm running up and down the stairs. Like Dino's downstairs on the couch. Gotta go get Dino now. Now I'm like running downstairs for like a water. My children always need like they're like parched while they're laying in bed. I'm like, I don't know if we're really that dehydrated or if you're just stalling, but we started creating these bed baskets together. I would encourage you to do them together so that they have a say in it. And adding their water bottle, their bedtime story, whatever they sleep with, and just having it all in the basket has helped so much visually for them because it's almost like a checklist. So when we're done with one thing, on to the next. And then they know when they ran out of that entire bed basket, that's it. It's time for bed. And it's kind of gives them that closure and that like sense of like just expectation, I think is what it is. It's that expectation of like, we're going to go through this. This is our special time. We're hitting every single thing that I need to be hit. And then it's really and truly time for us to go to bed. And it's really put a lot of closure to our night where when I shut the door is shut permanently, like till the next morning. Whereas before that, I did find myself going in there a couple of times before it was like truly good night. Um, so yeah, I think those are some really great tips and tangible things that we can all kind of implement for back to school when it comes to bedtime. So I think we'll jump into the morning routine now.
Yeah. I will kick us off. I think what Deanna was just saying, I love that idea. I'm going to try that with my boys. Really, what you're saying, though, what I'm hearing is the importance of having some limits. And I think that bedtime and morning routines, limits are essential. And what happens over the summer is many of us get kind of lax with our limits, right? Because the schedule is different. I'm like, ice cream today, ice cream tomorrow. Like my limits are really out the door during the summer. And this is a great time to sort of reevaluate with your partner or your co-parent. What are those limits that matter to you? I love that idea of that basket, Deanna, because I think it sort of fits all the routine into one. It's like you've got your books picked out, you've got your stuffies, you've got your water bottles. No, we're not doing a pouch at bedtime. It's not in your basket. It's not what we do. That would be a very reasonable limit, right? A really good example of a limit in my house is we read two books. We don't read three. We don't read four. We always read two. Sometimes we read one, right? If they're too tired, but generally two. And so I don't have that fight anymore with my kids of like, but I wanted more. It's a limit. It's really clear. So as we go through our conversation today, I want you thinking about limits and what limits you can instill. And again, if your kids are older, sometimes they're part of that conversation. With younger kids, we're going to tell them, here's how we do things. So let's talk a little bit about the morning. Again, why does a routine matter in the morning? First of all, a predictable and low stress morning. If anyone can experience a low stress morning, let me know how you do it. But it really does set the tone for the day. And it helps kids arrive at school feeling regulated. And when they're regulated, and I'm sure Courtney has stuff to say on this, they're more able to learn and access their thinking brain. So I'm thinking about a typical morning, right? It's like you're running around, you're grabbing the backpack and the water. Did you get your shoes? Do you have your soccer cleats? And it's hectic. It's a hectic time of day by nature. So I hope in our conversation today, we can give you some ideas on actually how to bring it down a little bit, how to prepare and regulate, which I know Courtney will speak to a little bit. So what are things we can think about? A consistent wake up time is important. Now, because my kids consistently wake up early, what I focus on is a consistent time at which they leave their room. So I don't want to see them before 7 a.m. And that is a routine that we have. They plan their room, they do their thing, but consistently 7 a.m. is when they come on out. Similar to what I said in the evening, having something like a step-by-step order. Now, it depends on your child and their temperament and their needs, right? My kids are visual learners. They do really well with like a clear checklist. We are going to eat breakfast. We're going to get dressed. We're going to brush teeth. We're going to pack our backpack. That is what we do. I have a picture for each of those on my fridge. It's nothing fancy. And we go through that routine every single day. So you could start something like that now. Another really important thing to do is to have some buffer time to avoid rushing. So if you know that the 15 minutes before you leave the house are complete mayhem, then maybe this is what I do. I get downstairs 15 minutes before my kids come down. And it's time for me. Like I have my cup of coffee while I'm getting things organized, but that is my buffer time. And it's really set us up for success. The other huge thing, which I'm sure many of you, as parents of multiple kids have learned to do, but prepping the night before. A little prep goes a long way. All right. So if you have younger kids and they're not yet interested or picking out their own clothes, You're laying their clothes out beforehand. My kids don't care what they wear. I'm trying to get them to pick out their clothes, but they're really not interested. So I'll often just lay their clothes out outside their door and they see it, and it's the first thing they need to do before they come downstairs. Ironically, they're so messy when they eat that they spill and then change again. So I need to work on that piece of my own routine. Um, but thinking about how you can prep the night before. And then for older children, encourage them to take some ownership. This is really hard as parents, relinquishing some control, giving our older kids more independence. Maybe it's setting their own alarm, or maybe it is prepping their own breakfast or packing their own snacks, checking their school bag. This makes parents very nervous because what if they forget something? What if they don't pack the snack? But guess what? That's how they're going to learn, right? So, what we expect of different ages is obviously, it's going to look different. So, make sure you're keeping your expectations developmentally appropriate, right? I can't expect my 4-year-old to remember to independently pack a snack. But a 9-year-old, if they pack a snack every day, it might be reasonable to say, you're in charge of your snack. That is part of your routine. Okay. So, in terms of when to start making this shift, I mean, similarly, give yourself a little bit of time to start to implement these new routines and get back to some limits. My biggest recommendation would be, and then I'll stop talking at you. My biggest recommendation would be do a practice morning, especially if it's your child's first year going to a school or a new school. So you're going to do a trial run, maybe a couple trial runs where you get up, you get dressed, you do breakfast. I did this with my son before he started preschool. You drive into the preschool and you say, this is where I'm going to drop you. What do you think you might say when you get out of the car? Okay, I'm going to say, bye, I love you. I'll see you after. But going through that routine, particularly with younger kids, is super important. Okay. Um, I will pass it along to Courtney.
I loved all of that, Chloe. Thank you for all of that. Um, and just kind of piggybacking off of like the routines. So obviously in the morning, like it's going to be, you don't have as much time that you might have at bedtime to kind of like, do like an activity where you would do some kind of like movement into getting dressed. But you can do again an obstacle course for movement to get dressed. But some kids wake up dysregulated because our sympathetic nervous system is what wakes us up, right? Our red zone wakes us up to alert us for the day. So some kids can get stuck in that, especially if they have like a sensitive nervous system. And so what you want to do is help them shift into like this more green zone. So what for younger kids, what I like to do is like, have their stuffed animals, give them like hugs and squeezes to give them some passive proprioceptive input to the body. And if they're not really wanting touch because they're overwhelmed and their sympathetic nervous system is like red flag, I don't want anyone touching me, you can encourage them to squeeze them. Or I've even had them be like, all right, let's wake up our stuffed animals, and we'll like try to throw our stuffed animals like in a basket, like tossing, using your arms to toss. And that visual motor input and use can be very, very organizing and help kind of deactivate this like fight or flight response, because you're doing something that is more top brain, right? It requires more thinking and execution and whatnot. So those are some ideas for that. And then just easily you can add in regulating sensory input by having like their water bottle and encouraging them to drink out of something with a straw or something that, or like maybe like they wake up and the first thing before they even start anything is they have a pouch, or they have like, their smoothie ready in the morning or whatever, like prepping the night before. But any kind of like oral input where they're sucking and they have to like use their oral muscles, and that will help activate the parasympathetic nervous system also, like for in their morning routine. So like any kind of like cold or frozen item, like anything that's cold will stimulate the vagus nerve and help turn on that green zone. That green light will start to turn on. um and usually kids need a little, if they need a little bit support with becoming more alert, you can do again, you can add in like a movement for getting dressed. And again, same thing with brushing teeth. Like you can add in like maybe you just set a timer for 1 minute and you do bubble mountain in the sink before you brush your teeth. So you kind of got a little regulation in there before you have to do something that maybe if your kid's sensitive doesn't like to do. So you're just trying to kind of like blend in and build in some like sensory regulation into your routines that are already established. So those are like my go-to for like to try out and see how your child responds, by adding in the cold, adding in some like breath work into the activity, um, you know, using play as you transition. Again, you can use like your friend, your stuffed animal, your imaginary friend, or you can have them be like, if they're older, like the superhero and be like, play like the, I don't know, like, can you guide me? I don't know what to do. Sometimes I do that with my daughter, but she's 4.5, so she's younger. Um, but being like, "Oh, like, I forgot. How do we do this?" And then she's like, "I know." And she'll like, she wants to be the leader because it's easier to take or to do something like yourself than to take demands, because sometimes those demands aren't processed well in the morning because it's a lot of more advanced thinking of the brain. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my spiel for like sensory morning, like very brief, obviously not very detailed, but just starting to think about how can I build in some of these simple things into the morning just to proactively regulate. You can even do like animal stomps if for younger kids, or like hop like a bunny, or like, race if they're more alert. But again, you're always, and this is what I teach a lot too, is like what state of regulation is your child in? Because you can't, if you plug in, like you can plug in like breath work and like cold things, because we know those things are good. But like when it comes to activity and movement, like what state is my child in? Are they a little bit more like groggy and tired and need some alerting, or are they like really highly sensitive and, and anxious or whatnot? And kind of gauging where they're at is important, and starting to notice those patterns. And then once you notice those patterns and once you know what state of regulation they're in, then you can move on from there, where so that you can actually support them appropriately. So that's where I would start, is like noticing those patterns. I always say that. Notice patterns, what are the triggers, and then have them reflect on it too later on. And you can reflect on it yourself too. I'm like, I know that in the morning I'm dysregulated if I don't shower before I leave the house. So I know that I have to shower before I leave the house because it like wakes me up. Even if I don't do my hair, I just like have to shower. It's like I need the input to my body. Um, and it just makes me feel calm too, like the heat and everything like that. So again, you could even, if you have time, like maybe like a shower in the morning for older kids works better than at nighttime, right? So really thinking about like what your individual child's needs are based on that.
I can totally relate to that, Courtney. My son, my 5-year-old, wakes up wired. Like, and I truly do believe that it's anxiety. Like, he wakes up totally wired and like stressed out. He's nonstop talking. And it's like, whoa, I just need to wake up for a second. Um, Something that's really helped us is, and I don't know if anyone's aware of this. I feel like everyone comes at it in different levels. Like some of you have heard of it, some haven't. But I play frequencies in the morning. So like my kids come down and I am playing 432 hertz on YouTube. They don't even they realize it, but it just brings down the energy. And honestly, it's been so helpful for me because similar to my son, I wake up wired, like cortisol through the roof, and I'm like, what do we have to do today? Like the list feels overwhelming, and I can't even just have that little moment for myself. So, having a frequency playing has been incredibly helpful. It's so easy. If any of you are interested in frequencies or meditations, I'm happy to talk about it outside of this webinar. Just DM me or shoot me an email. But those are two things that have been incredible for me and my family at both morning and bedtime. Additionally, similar to the bedtime basket, having a launch pad for morning is critical for me, especially. For me, it's my dining room table. Everything that needs to make its way out the door has to be stacked on the dining room table. Otherwise, I am totally overstimulated and the mental load, I'm sure a lot of you can relate. My partner's not going to think about all the things that my kids need as we're walking in the door. Guess who is? It's me. So I need to stack everything in one spot. So I have this visual of what's actually leaving. And for me, even during camp, like it was their first year going to camp, like it was backpack, my purse, my water bottle, and then the sunscreen. Because if I didn't have the sunscreen there, no one was getting sunblock before they went to camp. Like it's just having that visual and also just like helping you with the mental load, which I feel like truly does help with like the nerves of back to school, but even beyond back to school, of like just the fight or flight. Like sometimes our homes can kind of operate in that fight or flight. I know I'm guilty of it. When you just have a lot going on. And I know for me, I just try to be present when I'm with my kids. Otherwise, everything, work, everything else is just gonna flood in that morning time. And that's that time. And then I regret it. Then I get drop them off and I'm like, why couldn't I have enjoyed that a little bit? Why couldn't I have just remained present and like organized? So having that launch pad, I think really is a focal point for both you and your partner, especially if you have a partner that helps you get out the door in the morning, or if they're driving someone and you're driving someone, at least then you know they're not forgetting anything and there's nothing that you're leaving behind. Um, and like I said, when it comes to the frequencies and the meditations, that's something I'm really passionate about. We probably don't have time to talk about it, but if anyone is interested, please email me, shoot me a message, and I'd be happy to share my favorites. So now we're like chatterboxes because we don't have that much time. Let's get into the actual transition for back to school, and then we definitely want to get to all your questions.
Yeah, I will be very quick because there we are chatterboxes and we've covered a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that this shift from summer to school can feel very big. It can feel big for our kids, but it also can feel big for us as parents. A new season is coming, and whether it's new schedules or expectations or new environments. So when we think about this transition, a gradual and intentional approach can really help our kids and us, to be honest, feel more prepared and less anxious. So, some things to think about: talking about what's coming. So, discussing new routines, teachers, any other big changes that they can expect. Now, there's a balance here because we don't want to start talking about it too early. That's coming from a place of our own anxiety. We want to strike the balance of talking about it in an informational way, but not out of our own nerves. That we should handle with our co-parent, our partner, our good friend. We take that energy elsewhere. Um, so we get our class list like 4 days before school starts. And so that's a natural time for me to bring up, okay, things are going to be different this year. You're going to be in second grade. You're going to have a new teacher. You're going to be in a new hallway. You're going to have new friends in your class. Let's look at, so I share what's different. And then I always go back to, but what's staying the same? Because that consistency is very comforting for some kids. Your bus is staying the same. You've got three friends that you're really close with who are going to be in your class. Maybe your after school is staying the same, or we're still going to always do Taco Tuesday. Whatever your thing is, just be aware when you're sharing everything that's different, also come back to the things that are staying the same because it's very grounding to our kids. If you're able to visit their school, especially if it's a new school, we always do a visit to the playground beforehand to just like remind them. I'll be like, do you remember what you used to do here? Do you remember where you get dropped off and picked up? Um, you might start to reintroduce some school habits. Like I said, you could do a practice day. You could have them practice packing their backpack. And, the school year, often the fall, just in general, I feel this as an educator, but also as a parent, the fall is hectic. So I would encourage all of you to think about how you can build in tiny moments of connection with your kids during this transition. 5 minutes a day, literally 5 minutes for you to connect one on one with that child. I'm still trying to figure out like what that's going to look like for me this fall, but those moments of connection go so far. So if you have the luxury of being able to fit those in, I highly, highly encourage you to do that. And remember, finally, you model the calm confidence you want your child to go into school with. Your child is looking to you. So we have our own feelings and our anxieties and our questions about the school year, of course. But if you can model, like, you've got this, you can do this. It's such a great message to our kids. Okay. All right. That's all I have to say on that. Courtney, all you.
I love how you ended it because that's like bridging into. I had the clapping hands I put up over here. You saw.
Thank you.
But it's so true. Like our nervous systems, like when we're transitioning, cause a lot of anxiety because we have to, when we're transitioning to something new, and then like when we're transitioning out of our house out into, the environment where we're not like there's not a lot of predictability, right? And we don't know like what we're going to encounter, and it's not as predictable and familiar. So it can cause a lot of anxiety. So you're right, like when we have those true like moments of connection, it helps keep that our brain online, like our thinking brain online, so we can be rational and like we can fight those anxious thoughts. And that's why like with like using those words, like using safe and calming words too can be really helpful too, because it helps remind their brain that they're safe. So that's why I love all of her affirmation cards and everything, because it gives you, and you could even like pick one that you're going to use for the day or that you use every morning, or a couple of them. But anyways, so I'm going to give you, because I know we're running out of time, I'm going to give you some examples of how I created some togetherness with my daughter when she was in school last year. And it was hard because it was her first year. She was in like threes, so she would only go for 2 hours or whatever, but it was still hard. So what we liked to do is use songs. So like for older kids, you can play songs that they like, but like for younger kids, like preschool, kindergarten, I love to do like singing for transitions as you like leave out of the house. Or like right before you leave, we always use the ants go marching, because then we would march and we would get movement in with it as well. Or like we would do five little speckled frogs and jump, and it just kind of made it always fun because she always wanted to go to the car because we got to do that together. And then it was regulating for her. And then I would always arrive 5 minutes early to school and sit in the parking lot, and then I would get in the back seat with her because like I had to get her coat on, because we had the whole like drop off thing. It's like, okay, get them in their coat and then they'll slide out of the car, whatever. So I would get in the back and I would put her coat on, and I'd make sure that like, she was getting my full attention, and we'd do some kind of like hand clapping game. I always tell people like, why don't we go back to what we used to do when we were kids? Like Red Rover, like all these games like that. I feel like they don't play them anymore. But anyways, we did like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, where I would do, it was simple, right? I was like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And then whoever's on top wins, and like I would like tickle her, whatever. And then I would pretend this is like my go-to with her, which she's kind of aging out of. It's sad, but it's like this spider. It's like, oh, the itsy bitsy spider came and he gave you a squeeze right here, or he tickled you, or he hugged your leg, and giving like that passive proprioceptive input while you're connecting. It only takes a couple minutes, and it just kind of keeps, again, before they transition, you're creating that safety, and you're lighting that part of the brain up before they go into school, where there's going to be a lot more like things that are unpredictable and more challenging and demanding on the brain. So that's all I'll say, because I could talk forever about this and give you more examples and stuff, but that's my sensory uh synopsis or whatever.
This is why we did this event together, because we're so aligned. I mean, everything you guys said were just exactly what I would suggest. You know, the mindset tapestry, Courtney, like you mentioned, it really is the tool to like create those connections and those mini or micro conversations. That's the best part of it that I think people don't realize, right? Similar to what Chloe was saying, it's like you don't want to overwhelm them with this super stressful, heavy conversation. Like it's back to school. Like, what's going to be different? What are you afraid of? Like, we never want to use those words that are like kind of inducing fear. But what you do want to do is I like to do this with my 5-year-old, because he is someone who runs a little anxious and he's always thinking into the future. And I know he's 5 steps ahead of me. So I have to sprinkle in these like little conversations, and they could just be probing questions. They could be, what are you curious about this year? Like, what are you interested to know? Like, what's going to happen the first day? Or like you were saying, Chloe, like my kids saying they go to Montessori school, so like it is a tiny school and like it's not a huge change, but like 5 of his friends are leaving. And like there are some new families coming in, and he's going to be the oldest kid, and a lot of the kids are going to be younger. And I have to prepare him for that. I can't just let him walk in the first day and see a bunch of 3-year-olds. Like, not to mention now he has this bigger role. So we are using the mindset tapestry to kind of prepare him for that and like give him the, I guess the idea that he can do it, right? Like that self-esteem, building that confidence, like you give them this identity, like it's our job for them to give them the visual that they are capable, resilient, brave, and all these things. And truly when they hear it from you, they're going to start believing it because they look to you. They know you're the truth, right? So I think that's just a beautiful way, in any way that you do it, whether you use the tapestry or you just use it like in talking in the car. Like it could be so simple, like Courtney said, and it just that connection's so important. And I think as parents too, like we need that. Like I know as a working mom, like even if I wasn't a working mom, but I remember going in, I don't teach anymore, but when I was teaching and I was spending 6 hours a day with these kids that I really did love, but now I had my own kids at home. And it felt like I had like 5, 10 minutes with them by the time we ran out the door. And it's like, honestly, like and that's why I created what I created because I was like, he needs it, but like, so do I. Like, I need that to hold on to. It just fills your cup and just makes you feel like you're doing both, which we all are. We're all doing everything, right? So, um,
And it's
yeah,
all rooted in neuroscience. Like this is all like polyvagal theory stuff too, right? Like this is stuff that's been studied and we know it works. Like everyone, might be throwing around a lot, oh, make sure you connect, make sure you connect. And it's like, oh yeah, like how do I connect? And I think that is like a job in itself is like, how do I connect? And like starting to like try out things and see how it goes. Or I think even for me connecting, like setting for me it's like setting a timer now, like, and I know that I have like 5 minutes with my daughter or 10 minutes where I'm like really engaging with her and whatever she wants me to do, and then I can feel regulated knowing I spent that one-on-one time with her. Like I know that I got like it's like tracked and logged in my brain, so I don't have to feel
Yeah.
guilty. Like that's a big thing too, right? Like I feel dysregulated because I feel guilty because I need to do it all, but really you don't need to do it all. You need to find the micro moments. Then when when you're not as busy, maybe on the weekends, like you can really truly enjoy that time because you're like, oh, I don't have to like time it to make myself feel, like
And
I
if
did.
you're not sure where
100%.
to start with building this connection, like get on the ground with your child and set a timer for 5 minutes and don't bring your agenda. Like just be in their world and just even your presence,
Yeah.
right? It's harder as our kids get older, but if your kids are younger, like just being there. I work with a lot of parents who are like, I don't love playing with my kid, right? But just be there.
They
And
love when you're there. They want you to
that,
watch them.
exactly. Yeah, I love what you guys said. Very
So can either of you see the chat or should I stop sharing?
it doesn't look like questions were put in the chat. There were some that were
In
sent.
conversation, it seems, yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Can you see?
Well, if anyone has any questions, feel free to, we're here, we're resources. We want to be able to help you in any way that we can. We also did provide, I don't know if you guys can see this, but we wanted to provide some complimentary offerings to you. Um, you could scan any of these QR codes, take a picture of it if you want to save it for a later date. We're all offering, I know I'm offering 20% off your order. You could use code Auggie TMT20, and that applies to any of our products. Courtney, I don't know. I'll let you describe what you're
Oh
offering.
yeah, I have 20% off the regulation guide, and then I also have a free email subscription group where you can just go to my stand store and it says subscribe for free, and I send out emails during the week of like tips and stuff like that too. So that's like free as well. But yeah, I'm giving 20% off of my regulation guide, which is a lot of the stuff that we talked about today or just very touched on very briefly. Chloe,
And
do
then,
you Chloe?
yeah, yeah, if you scan my QR code, it'll bring you to a 30-minute complimentary session, which is something that I offer to anyone and everyone before I work with them. It's just a chance to get to know each other, hear what's top of mind, share my approach before we commit to working together. So everyone gets a 30-minute free session first. But what's unique to this talk is I'm offering 10% off a session afterwards, or 10% off a session package. And that's with the code Auggie10. So that would be the step after the first session. So if you're interested in talking, you can scan that code and it'll bring you to my Calendly.
Amazing. And also, if you want to just take a screenshot of this really quick, we just want you to talk to us. Let's chat. Find us. Here are our websites, our emails, and we're here. We're open books. Hopefully, you guys were able to take away some really tangible things for back to school that, can help you and help your kids. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
We just got one question in the chat, which I can, it looks like, which I can answer quickly. How to handle bedtimes when your kids are of a wide age range, 14, 11, 8, and 4. This is a great question. I think bedtime in general is tricky. And when you're dealing with multiple kids of different ages, it is also very tricky. With an age range like that, you are going to have staggered bedtimes. What a 4-year-old needs is different from what a 14-year-old needs. So, what I would probably do is I would sort of like jot down a little bit of a rough schedule, but that would be more to help me. And what I would think about is, what are the things that your older kids can do independently, being very explicit in giving them direction and tasks. And of course, there are things that your 4-year-old and your 8-year-old need a lot more support with. And that's actually what I would use to get you through the challenge of multiple kids at multiple different bedtimes. Some families I work with who are in this situation is they actually give their older kids the task of helping with their younger kid, but that's very much a temperament thing, not for everybody. But if your older kid needs to practice some reading and your younger kid needs to hear some reading, I have a lot of families who will have their older kid read a chapter book to their younger kid. So just an idea, but yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love like the like grouping, or like someone has a partner, like an older and a younger child. And because, like for older kids, when they can complete tasks or like finish something, like it feels good. And even like having like a checklist and everything is good too, because then you can like check it off of like what you did, each person. That's how I started. My daughter was, she started to like the bedtime routine, is because she got to like take off a tile or check off or cross off something when it was done. Because it was like, oh, like I finished that, because it's a lot of demands thinking about bedtime, but when you kind of like break it down in that way, and then again doing something, maybe starting off all together, like especially like if it's like younger kids, like it's fun for the older kids to like see the younger kids have fun, right, too. So the one thing I tried when my friend came with her two friends is like we did blanket parachute, or like we had a big blanket and we tossed all the stuffed animals on it, and we were just like, we were shaking it and being silly, and then like we went off into doing like our routine after that, just to kind of, again, building in like a little moment of connection and silliness before we transitioned to doing like, group tasks.
All right, so looks like we're a little over. If anyone has any questions, they can definitely reach out to us. It was really so amazing to be with all of you. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much to the team at Augie for having us.
Yes, thank you,
Thank
Auggie.
you.
Yeah, and I hope everyone has an amazing day.
Yes.
Thank you all. Hope you all
Thank
have a great day.